Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Color of Money, where I, your host, Grace Coughlin, pull back the curtain on the lives and lessons learned by entrepreneurs to understand how to make that first dollar. Super excited to have another female entrepreneur in the space doing just that. So let's welcome Laura. Hi, Laura. So happy to have you here on another episode of Color of Money. You want to just take a quick second to introduce yourself, tell us a little about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Laura Rippy. I am a venture capitalist and was previously a founder and CEO about 3 times, and really thrilled to sit at that intersection of kind of innovation and the future that venture capital represents.
Totally. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Like I said, we're so happy to have you here on another episode. So, just kind of kicking off, I'd love to start my interviews with a little fast five to show some color in your life. So, let's get started. If you were an animal, what would you be?
I wish I could be a gazelle. I think of gazelles as lean and fast and zippy and ahead of the
Totally.
pack.
Love that. Would you say you're more of a morning or nighttime person?
Definitely morning.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Morning for the win.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite breakfast food?
So I do. I do a shake. It's got a product called kefir in it, which is like
Mm,
a fermented, almost like a yogurt, but it's milk and fermented. And I put matcha and protein powder and creatine
delicious.
and a little turmeric and a little cinnamon in it. So yes, I have a bit of a concoction for my breakfast.
I love that. That's great. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Hmm. Empathy.
Empathy. Awesome. And what's an unpopular opinion that you have?
Hmm. I think unpopular with my children is kind of how much you need to work
Yeah,
in life to accomplish anything. There's sort of that mix of having this brilliant idea and then the reality of you actually have to get stuff done for it to come to fruition. So
true.
I'm sure my kids would love to have kind of the sprinkle the magic dust and it all work out sooner. But you do have to put your shoulder to it, don't you?
You do, you do. So let's get started with the interview. So, kind of kicking off, Laura, in our community, people aren't short on ideas. We know this. They can be short though on the understanding of what it takes to make that initial leap. So, can you just share with us what led you to make your first jump, your initial leap into everything that you've done?
Yeah. I think for me, there was a big inflection point. I had started my career at Microsoft. I was there after business school for about 8 years, and this
Hmm.
opportunity presented itself to become the CEO of a company that was in the mobile space. And for me, it was a leap because I was
Yeah,
part of this big brand, and to be a part of a little company that was just getting started was a bit terrifying, to say
yeah,
the least, and I think the thing that I personally had to get over as a human was the fear of public failure, because when you're the
totally.
CEO, when you're the founder, like, whether or not it succeeds, a lot of that, even though it is a team effort, ends up focusing on the leader, and so I had to kinda get my mental map past that point, even though
Hmm.
interestingly, when I was at Microsoft, I started 3 companies while I was there, sort of
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur internally, but
Hmm.
the difference of when you are the spotlight, when you are the founder, when you are the entrepreneur in charge, when you're the CEO, I had to get past that.
Yeah. And can you share with us a little how you did get past that? What techniques, you use just to push through?
So, I think, my favorite quote is an Eleanor Roosevelt quote. I don't know if you've
Mm,
heard this one, Grace. It's, something to the effect of, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent."
I love that.
And for me, that was it. It was like, "You know what, Laura? Like, nobody else is having this hang up. Like, just
Right.
go do it. And if you feel flat on your face, well, at least you tried." And
Totally.
so it was really kind of the mental conversation with me internally to say, "What the heck? Like, go run, sprint, go do this thing. I mean, do your diligence first and understand if it's the right fit for you,
Right.
and there's a market opportunity, but then, like, get out of your own way and go do this. So there's a
Exactly.
mental
Yeah.
conversation. All right, it sounds like you're identifying with that, Grace. Has something like that
Yeah.
happened to you?
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like just putting yourself out there is can be kind of scary, but just knowing that like hopefully everything will has a purpose and it will be worth it in the end, just making that final jump, that first jump is always like scary,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when you do, I think everything is hopefully worth it.
Yeah. Even
Totally.
and also it's part of it, it's the journey, right? Like even if you fail, like you've learned as much on that journey, right?
Totally.
And that's part of sort of your premise when you opened and said, a lot of people have ideas, but not as many sort of execute against them. That's the
Right.
whole point. Like an idea is an idea, but when you can really
Mhm.
build something, that's the magic.
Totally. And when you feel like you were first starting out, was there anybody that you had in your life that you had to kind of convince that this was the right step for you or that you had backing you up at the time?
I mean, I guess in the step that we were talking about, I was married, so that was
Mhm.
a piece of it is working with
Yeah.
my husband. He's been a huge cheerleader, so it wasn't as much of an obstacle. I think it was of my own sort of architecture here and my own initiative. So I think I had the autonomy to go make that decision myself.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like you always hear that the work-life balance is like impossible to attain. Do you feel like that's been possible?
Uh, I think you have to do it with intentionality. So I've had
Mhm.
different chapters in my life where I've addressed it different ways. Like
Yeah.
before I had kids, totally different scenario than with kids. So at
Mhm.
one point when I was a young mother, the way that I took care of it was I had been a CEO and I did a chapter in my life where I was like doing on boards. And I was
Yeah.
fortunate because at the time, oh my God, there were no female CEOs, right? I mean, it
Mhm.
was like
Right.
1% or 2%.
Yeah.
And yet folks wanted to have diverse boards. They aspire to that now. And so I was able to do some board work. And the funny thing is, when you're chairman of a company, guess what? The board meetings never happen on school vacations,
Yeah.
right? Because you can plan those things. And so I was able to balance those pieces. And now, once my kids kind of really were, further along school wise, they actually were the catalyst. I had my daughter, I remember, come into me and she's like, Mom, you should just jump back in and go do this full force. Like we're fine. We'll make our own dinners, right? Like
Yeah,
so, really cheering me on. And same thing with another one of my children had the same kind of whisper in my ear, like go. And so
that's
felt
great.
like I
Yeah,
had license from them to jump in.
yeah. No, I mean, that's amazing that you've been able to have such support because I feel like that's such a critical factor. Kind of going back to this, like, having support, would you feel like there's been any mentors that you've had just throughout your career that have really made an impact on who you are as a person and that you really just feel like you can always go to and lean on whenever you need them?
Yeah. So one in particular that comes to mind, his name is Richard Tate, and I worked for him a long time ago when I was at Microsoft. And he's a very clever fellow. He's originally Scottish, has a
Mm.
funny accent, and he certainly helped me professionally. But then there were other times, like I remember we had a conversation about, when he was getting married, he's like, "Is there someone that you've been thinking of?" Like he just sort of prompts to these things to sort of think about that full life, so it wasn't just about
Totally.
work. He unfortunately passed about a year
Mm.
ago due to COVID, and that was just very sad
Yeah.
to hear because he had touched so many people. So his memorial service was really broad. One of his favorite talents that I wish that I was better at, he mentored, but I don't think I was ever quite as good as he was incredibly creative. So when he
Mm.
left Microsoft, he started this company called Cranium, which you may have played the games. There's things like Cranium Caribou and
Okay, yeah.
yeah, does that ring a bell? So it was
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
the largest independent gaming company created, sold to Hasbro. And
Amazing.
the premise was around creativity and
Mhm.
the fact that in the core of the game, there were creative moments done by drawing, done by acting, done by
Yeah.
sculpture. And it just sort of reflected the fact that creativity enters the conversation with people from all sorts of different backgrounds and talents. And part of
Mhm.
coming to an incredible answer is sometimes bringing in those voices and perspectives. And it was, even though it's a kid's game, it candidly has a lot to do with building a great business as well.
Yeah, 100%. Totally. Can we jump back a little bit? Can you kind of talk about the two companies that you started and just kind of go into a little deeper on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So it actually is tied to your comment about the work-life balance. So I hit a
Yeah.
point where I wanted to be in a role where I could have some presence with my kids, but
Hmm.
I wanted to go build a business again
Yeah.
and be hands-on. And so I acquired two companies that were e-commerce companies that needed kind of a jolt in the of energy, right? And
Yeah.
it was somebody who was retiring. They had built a business with a lot of organic traction and presence, but needed a refresher in terms of brand and tech
Yeah.
and really to grow. And so I bought those
Hmm.
two businesses and overhauled them. I mean, like down to the nitty gritty of the tech, all the way up through the brand, through the
Hmm.
sourcing approach, through the quantitative tracking, through the the way that we financially built the business, hired a whole
Yeah.
new staff for each of them. And I did it in a couple of clever ways to do that work life balance. I put the office location close to my home because it was an e-commerce
Okay.
business. So it was like a
Yep.
mile away. Fine.
Hmm.
And I was able, the way that I staffed it is I was aware that there were a lot of people who wanted to get back in the workforce who were, oftentimes moms who had taken some time off. And so I
Totally.
created the business opportunity for them to work during sort of those hours because it was
Mm.
e-com. I could hire
Right.
more people, sort of 1099s during that period of time and enable more people to get their careers kind of started again. So I was really proud of that. And the other piece I did, there was a portion of the second business that um, opened the door to have folks who were disabled be on
Okay.
staff. And
Hmm.
so it was kind of like a give back to the community. So I had like a dozen people who were able to really have a pride of work because they could contribute to society. We benefited,
Hmm.
and it was really sort of raised the whole, while it was profitable and I sold it and made some money on the whole enterprise, it also
Yeah.
had a component that aligned with my values and felt good
Totally.
to be part of building it.
Yeah, I mean, that's so amazing. Just everything that you just said, just the people that you took on in such a hard time for so many of their lives. Just I feel like that's just so inspiring and so many more people should be like that. Is there kind of a pinpoint moment that you kind of remember where you were looking back and you knew it was going to be a success? You knew what you were doing was going to work out and you knew it was all going to be okay.
Yeah. So I would actually go to the business that I led, venture back that was out of Microsoft, and so just as a sort of a circle back to understand what it was, I'm sure you've downloaded apps on your phone.
Yeah.
Um, so we were actually the first app store. So this is before the iPhone launched. This was for other kind of mobile devices.
Mhm.
And we created the category and the metaphor, and we were the first app store, and we had just a host of partners, kind of blue chip
Crazy.
partners.
Yeah.
And there was a point where we won. Um, we convinced the leader of the industry to join us, and it had been this very long conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
just kind of you're working and you're working and you're convincing and you're proving and you're showing sort of traction and you're understanding it. And when we got that deal, that was like, up. Phew, that's the unlock. That's like the
Yeah.
credibility. That's in German. It's the word is called Schlüssel, the key, and that was the unlock that really sort of started the business on this kind of the hockey stick that we grew, and that was really critical.
Totally. No, that's amazing. It's great to have those little moments where you just feel everything I'm doing, all the sacrifices I've made have been worth it, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of
absolutely.
just jumping back a little more, as you know, I'm 18, so I would just love to hear, and I'm sure for anybody else who is watching this, just to hear any advice. If you could go back and have a conversation with your 18-year-old self, is there any specific thing you would tell her?
She was very serious, I will say. She did have a lot of fun. So I went to Dartmouth and I
Yeah.
did have a lot of fun. So I can't say have more fun because I did. Um, I also had a lot of leadership roles. Like I didn't
Yeah.
have as I didn't wasn't like the academic powerhouse. I just led a lot of organizations. And so I would
Yeah.
still do that. I'd say the thing that I didn't clue into at that point, and I kind of wish that I had, was the
Mm,
power of the outdoors to be
mm,
enriching and healing. So at that time, even though I was going to school in New Hampshire, I don't think I went on a single hike while I was a student. And it
yeah,
took for me to move to Seattle for me to suddenly say, whoa, the power of going outdoors, clearing your head, go for a walk, get fresh air, you come back so much stronger and better. It's more than just exercise. If you are in a green space, it really is nurturing to your creativity, to
totally.
your ideas. And so I was so serious and focused. I should have gone for some hikes. How about that?
Yeah. No, that's great. Do you feel like like flash forward to the present, that's still something that you really try to do is just take some time outside, clear your head when you need to?
I do. I've noticed. So one of my when I was a CEO, one of my favorite things to do with people on my team is instead of do a one-on-one in an office, I'd go for a
Mhm.
walk.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
it's really clear. So I mentioned, when I was a CEO, it was very rare to have female CEOs. Like I think of like
Mhm.
one other one at that time period, venture backed. Like it was wicked rare.
Yeah.
And so naturally, I'm managing mostly men. The interesting thing is, if you are shoulder to shoulder with someone, particularly of the other gender, male tends to accept feedback better when you are in that peer position.
Hmm.
So going for a walk accomplishes a lot of things. You get the fresh air, you get energy, you get, all the goodness of it. And if you have
Right.
to deliver something challenging, that ability to do it where someone can preserve their dignity and be
Interesting.
listening
Yeah.
and absorbing as a teammate as you're walking, as opposed to head on conflictually, which works in a gender the same. So female to female, this is a nurturing conversation, but male male or male female
Yeah.
going for a walk is much better. So I did start when I was a CEO. I did a lot of my leadership walks that way, and it meant you could have more transparency and candor and success doing
Mm.
those kind of walks.
That I love that. Yeah, I feel like, whenever I'm stressed or just need to completely clear my head, I always feel like a walk, listening to a podcast, listening to music just gives me such a fresh perspective, you know?
Yep. Yep,
And then I
absolutely.
can come back to the situation with a clear head and clear mind. So I totally agree with that.
Yep, the research supports it. You're onto
Yep,
something, Grace.
exactly. Very true. So, kind of talking a little bit, you talked about conflict and challenges, maybe. Is there any challenge that, you had to overcome, something that was like straight there, you had to fix it, how you kind of dealt with that?
Yeah, so I would say, back originally, it was pretty rare to be a female CEO. Like, they you
Mm,
definitely didn't have the credibility, I mean, it wasn't as bad as somebody saying, "Go get the coffee," in a meeting, but pretty
yeah,
pretty close,
yeah.
right? So, you gotta just embrace it and say what's different, and so for me, like, I remember this one, conference I went to, it was put on by a investment banking firm, and there were, like, 700 people, and there were, I think, like, 150 or 200 CEOs represented, and I was totally the only woman,
That's
and
that's just that's just crazy to me.
I
Like,
know,
that
I
is
know.
just actually insane.
It's so much better now.
Yeah.
But so positive attitude, right? Like you got to kind of embrace that. So my mechanism for me is memorability
Mm,
and the recognition that if they saw, I don't know if it was, 175 CEOs speaking, there was only one woman who spoke. And so if they're going to remember, that woman when she presented, it was whatever,
totally.
right?
Right.
Either
Mhm.
smart or not,
Yep.
but at least they knew it was me, right? And
Yep.
so that I decided was kind of an unfair advantage that I had. And
Mm,
so I ended up, my startup was in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And so there were a lot of public speaking opportunities where they thought it was cool to have this young female CEO come speak. Wouldn't that
mhm.
be cool? Right? Kind of
Yeah.
like a little toy. And I was like, well, it's visibility for my company and they're going to
Yep.
remember me and I'm going to practice and I'm going to crush it. And that's going to lead to more good things for my company. So even though it was this feeling of being so unusual as to be an outlier, particularly in
Hmm.
that era, I kind of turned it around and said, hey, this is my unfair advantage. Y'all don't have this. I do. I'm the only one. So you can turn
Right.
things around if you have your head on straight and can reposition.
Well, yeah, I feel like that's just such an important life lesson in general, if something doesn't go your way and it's just a negative situation, just flip it. Think any positive outcome that can come of it, use it to your advantage any way you can, and just, try to make light of the situation.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
worked in Germany before I turned to sort of entrepreneurship. I was a consultant. This was before business school, and it was right when the wall came down. And
Mm,
I was a consultant going between the West and the East, and I was embedded within an all German consulting firm. And I was, I don't know, like 22 maybe,
yeah.
and female and American, and everybody in the firm was 30 and older and all male.
Mm,
And I would do these interviews, competitive interviews for like research for the consulting projects.
mhm,
And my German was kind of funny because I have this kind of American accent. It's in German. And I would get on the phone, and these competitors to our clients would
mm.
just tell me the dish, Grace. I mean, they would just unload this stuff
Yeah.
because
Wow.
oh, it's just like this young American woman who speaks German who's asking me these questions, like how
Little did they know.
little did they know.
Yeah.
So I would get back and I'd write up my notes, and the older guys on the team would all be like, "They told you that? Are you
Yeah.
kidding
Wow.
me? Whoa!" And I would
Again, to
get
your advantage. You got
that's
it.
what you gotta
Yeah.
do. You have an unfair advantage, right? You share that you're 18 and you're kind of figuring out, like, you
Yeah.
can ask the questions that other people don't ask because you're non-threatening, you're 18, right? Like, you can
Right.
ask those questions, and people wanna share, they wanna see you succeed.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I definitely you gotta flip things around and say, "Where do you have an unfair advantage from where you're coming?"
Yeah. That's great, Well, it worked out in your favor, that's for sure. Obviously many, many times. So, yeah,
They were
just gotta seize
floored.
the moment.
Yeah, yeah, they were
Yeah.
really floored. It was fun.
That sounds awesome. So, kind of just wrapping things up, we'll end with a little bit of a fun question.
Mhm.
If you had a book written about you, what do you think it would be called? Or what would you want the title to be and why?
Mm. So my best compliment ever,
Hmm.
was, so let me think. I don't know. I don't have a quick and sippy answer, but I'll tell you
That's
my
okay.
best compliment ever when I was a young leader at Microsoft.
Hmm.
I had a team, I don't know, 40, 50 people or something, and, we were in a larger building. We had this, like, hallway, and I got this unsolicited note from someone who is not on my team.
Hmm.
And the note was, whenever I feel down, I wander into it was called Boardwalk. I wander into the boardwalk hallway and I wade in their morale pool, and it picks me
Hmm.
right up. And that I took as such an incredible compliment, right? Like, here's somebody who's
Yeah.
not even our team and comes in and works with us and
Hmm.
says, just walks through and feels the energy and feels the excitement and the fact that this team is changing the world. And that just by walking through our environment, they waded in our morale pool and it felt good.
Yeah.
So there probably would be something clever about that I might
Mhm.
use a turn of phrase to say, because I feel like I really treasure the ability to motivate people and to kind of get the best out of them, because as a
Yeah.
leader, like, you can only create so much if you don't have this whole force of energy within the rest of the organization, you're really missing out. So
Mhm.
that's where I would come from, is something around that, and how do you unlock that energy?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that just speaks so much to you and your whole team that, you brought that energy that other people who aren't even on your team, realize that and want to come there. Like that's just speaks so much to you as a
Yeah,
person and
yeah, it
the
made
whole
me blush
team.
then, it makes me blush now. When I was a CEO, we were growing really fast. We were winning all sorts of awards, but I think, getting to profitability was important, but winning Best Places to Work awards was, as
Amazing.
much as
Cherry
anything.
on the top. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been so amazing. Thank you so much, Laura, for being
Yeah.
here today and speaking on the episode. It was so nice to have you.
Absolutely, Grace. Can't wait to see all that you create. So
Thank
glad to
you.
be a part
Thank
of
you
your
so
journey.
much.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care.